This podcast is brought to you by Collector Legion. For all your single and gaming needs, there is no substitute. And if you're lucky enough to find yourself in LA with time to play, check them out for the best in-person gaming experience this side of the Pro Tour. Welcome to Split Second Sorcerers. I'm your host with the most top decks, Isaac Sears. And today on the pod, we have the winningest quad sleever of all time, two-time GP Quarter finalist, and 100% killer of Humph. It's
the one, the only
Time Walking on Sunshine, or as you otherwise may know them, Daniel Wong.
Thanks for the intro, Isaac. Happy to be here.
My pleasure, man. So gotta know real quick, what's the first Magic card you hated?
Oh man, the first Magic card I hated. So I don't really like one drops that kind of snowball the game. So it would be Ragavan. There's not really a lot of cards that I've hated, and I feel like Ragavan just kind of, it's too much. It's too much.
Well, some other things that are too much is when your opponent just can't stand losing. What's your most memorable BM you've ever experienced?
So this was just at a local game store. There was some guy, don't remember his name, and he was just very, very salty about, getting mana screwed or whatever. So after the game, I was just like, hey, sorry, man. He's like, don't call me man. All right. Guess we're done here.
What's your favorite tourney venue?
Definitely just a local game store. My favorite local game store was Eudaimonia in Berkeley before that closed down. Nowadays, I go to Versus in San Francisco, but I don't really go there as often.
What's the worst card you've ever registered in a constructed tournament?
There have been a lot as a Time Warp player. I think that the worst that I've registered in Modern is probably Mikokoro, Center of the Sea. That's the land that taps for colorless. You can spend 2 and tap it. Each player draws a card. Sometimes you just need a Howling Mine on a land, and it kind of gets the job done. But definitely one of the worst cards that I've played a lot of.
What's your pre-tourney pump-up song?
I don't really have a lot of songs that I listen to for like pump up specifically, but during tournaments, it's usually whatever I have in my head on repeat. And the one that sticks out to me the most was at GP Las Vegas. I had Hamilton in my head because I had just seen Hamilton the musical. So it was It Must Be Nice to Have Washington on Your Side. That one was a good one.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a software developer. So I work for a company in Oakland called Everlaw. We make legal technology software, which is basically just software for lawyers.
Classic Magic player answer. What's your favorite card to try and wheel in a limited format?
Interestingly, my favorite limited playstyle is very different from my constructed playstyle. I like to get terrible one-drops and play aggressively. So it's something like...
like Ragavan.
Yeah, except build your own Ragavan. So something like you get a 1/1 flyer and you stick a Curiosity on it, or you get a 1/1 flyer and you stick a +2/+2 aura on it, or something stupid like that.
You gotta work for the busters.
Yeah, exactly. Because then I feel like I've earned it. So yeah, I love wheeling, a 1/1 flyer or a +2/+2 aura or Curiosity, something like that.
What's your first favorite Magic deck?
Definitely Time Warps or Taking Turns, whatever you want to call it. But that was, I think, the first deck that I really, really fell in love with. Before that, I had played Modern Storm, and I was kind of like, yeah, this is, it's good, but it's not exactly my style. I also didn't really like how much it loses to Eidolon of the Great Revel. But
what if I cast all my blue spells over a bunch of turns instead of just one turn?
Exactly. It's like the same thing, but just spread out.
If you could change one thing about Magic's bannings, unbannings, or structure, or anything like that, what would it be?
I would say the reserve list. So I don't really play Legacy that often, but it's mostly because it's really expensive, and so not a lot of people play. But it is a lot of fun. Like the times that I have played at my local game store, Eudaimonia, it was just awesome. But I would love for it to be more accessible. So I would love for Wizards to just print more cards.
They're already doing it already. What's your biggest or most embarrassing punt?
So the one that sticks out the most to me was because it was a win and in for top 8 at GP Toronto, forgot what year, 2018 maybe. But this was right after Arclight Phoenix had come out, and I didn't believe that Arclight Phoenix was a deck, so I didn't play against it at all, and I wasn't prepared. So the situation was I had a choice between casting Exhaustion to stop my opponent's like 2 or 3 Arclight Phoenixes that they had, or tapping them with Giga Drowse. And I went for Exhaustion because I figured that was safer. And my opponent ended up playing a thing in the ice, playing Faithless Looting or something to discard the Arclight Phoenixes, and then flipping the thing in the ice, discarding the Phoenixes, and killing me. So if I had just gone for the Giga Drowse instead, I would have made a 3rd top 8. So yeah, I should have respected the Phoenix, should have practiced against it, and should have learned to use the Giga Drowse there.
What one sentence lesson could you tell young Daniel Wong to best improve their game?
Read the cards. This, for me, it mostly applies to limited. There's a lot of times where I think I know what a card does, and then my opponent's like, okay, I'll trample over for 4. This has trample? What? So yeah, read the cards.
What's the first Magic card you remember?
The one that has the biggest story. Oh no, I forgot the name of it. But it was like a X3 black from Magic 2013. It was my first ever draft. I say it was like Demonic Consultation or something. It was a big demonic tutor. You tutor for X cards. So at 6 mana you get 1 card, 7 mana you get 2 cards. But yeah, it was my first ever draft, so I didn't really know the principles of drafting that well. I looked at all the cards, and I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. This card's a rare. It must be good. And then I remember promptly dying to, all of my opponents' actually good cards. Learned that Talrand's Invocation is pretty good. Spending 4 mana to get 4 power and flying is pretty good and limited. To my brain, I was just like, oh, 4 mana, 4 power? I can do that with any common. Whatever.
For those of you curious at home, the card he's referring to is Diabolic Revelation.
Diabolic Revelation, that's the name. So bad at
What
names.
was your favorite constructed format? Years, sets, what have you?
It's a huge range. It's modern from when Dictative Crucifix was printed to before Narset Parter of Veils was printed. So I guess that's, what, like 2014 to 2019-ish? But yeah, that was when Taking Turns was most viable as a Dictative Crucifix deck, and that was one of my favorite iterations of the deck. And yeah, once Narset got printed and Dictate became like worse than a blank, that was not great.
What's the most difficult match you've ever won?
For me, I think it was just because of nerves. My winning in for top 8 at GP Las Vegas. As I recall, like the match itself wasn't overly difficult. I was playing Taking Turns against Naya Zoo, but it was mostly every single step along the way. I was second guessing myself of just like, I'm on feature match. This is the make or break. I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to mess this up. So every single thing I did, I was double, triple checking in my mind. And that was super stressful, super difficult, but I did end up winning.
What's your favorite non-Magic story from a Magic trip?
All right, buckle up. This was a multi-part story, GB Toronto. So the backstory here is I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and as a result, I sometimes forget that weather exists. So GB Toronto 2018 happened to take place in February, and as it turns out, Toronto in February has snow, which is not a thing that I was prepared for. So the plane lands, and I'm dressed, hoodie, jeans, just like looking out the window. Uh-oh, I think I've made a mistake. So basically, any time that I spend outside, I'm trying to minimize, right? Like, okay, I'm going to call my Uber, I'm going to wait in the lobby, and as soon as it's here, I'm going to like run to it and then get to the venue, run from the Uber into the venue. Yeah, I was just not prepared. And then the following year, GB Toronto was also in February. So this time, thought ahead, packed warmer, brought a big old jacket in my carry-on, or sorry, in my checked-in luggage. This is key because on my layover, my flight got canceled. So I was just like, oh no, I need to get there like now so that I can make the tournament tomorrow. So, I'm talking to customer service and they're like, oh, okay, well, we don't have any more flights, but we can switch airlines for you. I'm like, okay, thanks. Great. Wait, but what about my checked in luggage? And they're like, yeah, no problem. We got this. Don't worry. I'm like,
course they
okay,
do.
sure, I believe you. So we land in Toronto, go to the baggage claim. I'm waiting. Everyone's grabbing their luggage, and I'm waiting, and it doesn't show up, obviously. So I talked to the customer service rep there, and she's like, "Oh, I see your luggage. It's still in Charlotte." So 2 years in a row, I have just a hoodie and jeans in Toronto in February.
All right, so Mrs. Kravitz says we got to keep the noise down. So we're going to have to wrap this up with one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Album or playlist?
Ooh, I'm going to go with playlist. I feel like that can just be a lot more varied than an album. Albums are great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a playlist just can hit harder,
All right, my friend, as we come to a close, do you have any upcoming tournaments the fans can sweat you in? Or perhaps a place where the good people can find you or your content?
I'll mostly be going to local tournaments, so local RCQs. And I post on YouTube occasionally at Daniel Wong Quad Sleeve Guy. So check me out there.
All right, well, that does it for this episode. Thanks to my guest, Daniel Wong, Richard Garfield, and you, the viewer. If y'all have any guests or questions you'd like to see asked on this program, feel free to let me know in the comments or just hit me up on Twitter @LikeIkes. And please do remember, folks, it's handshake, sign the slip, then throw your O3 deck in the trash, not the other way around.